Hi guys, how you doing? My name is Michael Villarreal, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the erector spinae and the quadratus lumborum muscles, a couple of muscles of the back. So let's get into some learning objectives for today's presentation. I want to identify the muscles of the back, specifically those two that I mentioned, the erector spinae and the quadratus lumborum. I want to identify a couple of the properties of the muscles, the origins and insertions, the nerve interventions, and the planes of motions that these muscles travel in. Okay, and lastly, I want to identify different actions of the muscles, okay, and show how they are used in your everyday activities, in your ADLs. All right. So, well, before I get to that, can anybody tell me exactly where those muscles are located? Give you a hint. Okay, well, good, because I know I said they're in the back, but they're specifically located. They run parallel. The erector spinae run parallel with the vertebral column, and the quadratus lumborum are underneath that on either side of the vertebral column. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's break it down a little bit more specifically. So the properties of the erector spinae. Now, the erector spinae are actually a group of three muscles. Okay, they are the spinalis, the longissimus, and the iliocostalis. All right. Now, the origin of all those of that group, they have a common tendon origin, the thoracolumbar aponeurosis. All right. That attaches to the posterior surface of the sacrum and the iliac crest, spinous processes of the lumbar, and the last two thoracic vertebrae. Okay. So that's going to be right in here, the iliac crest and the sacrum, and then it's going to insert all the way up. Okay, so the insertion is for the group. They have various insertion points because there are three different muscles. Okay, at the posterior ribs, the spinous and transverse processes of the thoracic and cervical vertebrae, and mastoid process of the temporal bone. So they're going to travel from the sacrum all the way up to the back of the skull to the mastoid process here, right behind, underneath your ear and right behind your jaw. Okay. So, and the nerve intervention for that, for the entire group, is going to be the spinal nerves. All right. Now, the action of these muscles is the plane of motion that these muscles travel in is going to be the sagittal. Okay. So that's going to be it's going to be flexion and extension of your back. Okay. And also, it's going to be the frontal because you have a lateral. The muscles also do a lateral assist and flex side to side. All right. So, real quickly, let's break down these the three muscles of the group. It's going to be the spinalis muscle. Now, the spinalis muscle is the closest to the vertebrae. Remember I said they all run parallel to the vertebral column? Okay. The origin of these is the spinous process of the upper lumbar and the lower thoracic vertebrae. The insertion of these is going to be the spinous process of the upper thoracic, the spinous processes of the cervicals, all of them except for C1. So it goes almost all the way up the vertebral column. Okay. Next one is going to be the longissimus. Now this one is just lateral to the spinalis. Okay. It's the longest muscle of all the back muscles, and its origin is the common tendon. Also, it has the transverse processes of upper 5 thoracic vertebrae, and the insertion on that one is the lower 9 ribs and transverse processes of thoracic vertebrae, the transverse processes of the cervical vertebrae, and the mastoid process of the temporal bone. So that's the one that goes all the way up to the skull. All right. The last of that group is the iliocostalis. Now, this is the one furthest from the vertebrae, so it's most lateral to the vertebrae. Okay, but still running parallel with the rest of the group there. Okay, it is chiefly responsible with assisting extension and lateral flexion of the vertebral column, and it's also the one chiefly responsible for maintaining an erect posture as well as bending the vertebral column from side to side. Okay, now its origin is also down the common tendon, the lumborum, the posterior surface of the ribs, 1 through 12, thoracic and cervices. The transverse processes the insertion of that is going to be the transverse processes of the lumbar vertebrae, 1, 2, 3. And posterior surface of ribs 6 through 12. Posterior surface of ribs 1 through 6, and transverse processes of lower cervicals. Okay? Can anybody, knowing that now, let's go over to the functions. Can anybody tell me an example of how we use this in our everyday lives for the rectus spinae?
When you tie your shoes?
That's right. When you tie your shoes, when you're bending over and tying your shoes, it's actually, when you bend over, it's flexion, right? So the rectus spinae are chiefly responsible for bringing you back up to an upright position, okay? So they maintain your upright position, whether you're seated or standing, okay? You're actually working your rectus spinae right now. You're sitting up straight, okay? Standing back up after you bend down to pick something up, and picking up. So the lateral assist is picking up something heavy on the one side, like a suitcase or whatnot. Okay. All right. So let's move on down to the next one, which is the quadratus laborum. Now the quadratus properties of the quadratus laborum here, we have the origin is the posterior iliac crest. So again, it's going to be right around the same area as the rectus spinae, but we're going to be up here on the iliac crest, and it's not going to travel near as far up as the rectus spinae. Okay, we're going up just to the last rib. So the insertion point on that is the last rib and transverse process of 1st through 4th lumbar vertebrae. Okay, and the nerve innervation with that is the lumbar plexus, T12, and L1 through 3. Okay. The actions of this, the plane of motion for the quadratus laborum would mainly be frontal, because it is your tilt side to side, okay, with some movement in the sagittal, because it does assist. It has an assist in the vertebral extension with the rectus spinae. All right, so the quadratus laborum is actually, I'm pointing to the back of the models here, and we're thinking it did say that it's a muscle of the back, but it's actually the deepest muscle from the abdomen. Okay, so its structure, it stretches actually from the posterior ilium to the transverse process of the lumbar vertebrae. Okay, and let's go to functions of the quadratus laborum. So, knowing what I just talked about right now, then can anybody give me an example of how you use a quadratus laborum in your everyday life?
Carrying a bag of groceries in one hand.
That's correct. Very good. Because, as you can see, when you're hiking up your hip, when stepping onto a big curb or over a log, the quadratus laborum, like I said, runs here to here and here to here, and it's going to pull and hike up your hip. Okay, but that also, as Kevin pointed out, that when you're carrying something on one side, it causes it enables you to stay upright. Otherwise, if you succumb to gravity, you'll fall over. Right? Raising yourself up if you're in a laying position, raising yourself up to a seated position. If you're laying on your side, you bring yourself up, and of course, there's dancing. So it moves your hips side to side. Okay, and because of its involvement in so many of our daily activities, it is commonly a cause for back pain and is often the subject of physical therapy. All right, and lastly, I want to go over a few exercises that we can do to strengthen these two muscles I talked about. The top three, you're looking at from left to right. We got the bird dog pose. All right, you line yourself up on your hands and knees, and then you alternate arm, opposite leg, raise them up, bring them back down to starting position, and then alternate. Okay. Now the middle one is your lumbar extension. There's many variations of this one, but this one you start in a prone position, hands up by your head or down by your side, raising the chest up to an extension there, and then you've got the row That's going to work both the extension and flexion of the erector spinae. And then down below for the quadratus lumborum, you got the side plank. That's going to be an isometric hold when you at the top position, or if you want to modify, you can dip the hip down, bring it back up for flexion and extension of the quadratus lumborum. And the last but not least is the asymmetric dumbbell carry that you see him carrying the dumbbell on one side there, because just like picking up a suitcase or a bag of groceries, like Kevin said, that's going to be working the quadratus lumborum on that side. And I've got some references here that I use in order to get this information for you guys today. I thank you for your attention, and thank you. All right, well, that was my presentation, and I wanted to give you guys a couple of my references that helped me get the information for today. I have erector spinae, retrieved from muscleuse.com, and the third one down is the obviously the Trail Guide to the Body by Beal.